know. It
What?
just, something just happened.
Did it just happen? I can still hear you and see you. Are you okay? Can you still see and hear me?
You're tiny now.
I'm tiny. Well, that's okay. I don't think anyone's going to complain if I'm tiny.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Maggie Gyllenhaal, what connected you with the character of Lisa Spinelli when you were first reading the script?
Well, when I was first reading the script, I think it was more of a kind of a visceral connection. The writing was so good, and I just felt a kind of magnetic pull toward doing it. But now that I've made it and I've thought about it and I've talked a lot about it, I think what connected me to it was a kind of feeling that a lot of women are having these days, that of waking up to what it feels like to be starving and to have spent, most of your life compromising in a culture that wasn't really built for you. And what happens when you can't handle it anymore? I mean, because The Kindergarten Teacher is about a woman who falls apart, which is something I think everyone does. I mean, it's an extreme example, right? And it's kind of like a thriller horror movie version of somebody who falls apart. But at the same time, I think it's like a really real depiction. Like what does it look like when a woman falls apart?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And what do you think the biggest question that is asked by the kindergarten teacher?
I think it's really asking the audience whether they can be, I think, brave enough to relate to somebody who is both, I think, so friendly and bright and curious and interesting, and also so broken, which I think is most of us. And I think it makes you have to say, and I look at the part of myself that is actually as broken as this woman is.
And I guess when this film deals with education, and it deals with the arts and expression, how do you, as an artist, how did that sort of inform the way you approach the role?
Well, I think I think it's about the consequences of what happens when you starve a vibrant woman's mind, and maybe in particular a vibrant female artist's mind. I don't think that Lisa Spinelli is a terrible poet, even though that's what her random night school poetry professor thinks. I think she's an unheard, misunderstood poet. I mean, is she like the biggest genius in the world? No, maybe, but I think it's interesting to consider who gets to decide what's worthwhile work, who gets to decide what gets published and what's lauded, and I think in a lot of ways, the movie is much sadder and actually much more of a tragedy if you consider that her work in reality was written by a brilliant published poet. What is she supposed to do if nobody can hear it and nobody can hear her? I don't really think that the little boy is like a super genius. I don't think that's the point of the movie at all. I think it's more her need to interact artistically, to express herself artistically, and she puts it on this kid. I mean, and that's really what's so disturbing about her, is she's hungry, she's starving, but she goes down the wrong road to try to feed herself.
And you are being such a strong central character of the film, and it being directed and written by Sarah Colangelo. This is not a film which is starved for female expression and empowerment, I guess, in filmmaking. What do you think that sort of, how did that inform it, the strong women voices that came into this film?
Well, it's interesting. We made this movie for nothing. You know, I was like literally changing my clothes in the bathroom on the Staten Island ferry. Like we were like running and gunning in New York in like the straight up classic tiny independent movie style that there really isn't much room for anymore. And so on some level, you know, you say, oh, it's made by a group of women and we're not like starving or whatever, but we didn't have enough money, you know, to tell this story about this woman and her mind and the ways in which she isn't fulfilled. We were like, oh, we're a group of women. We're like, okay, this is how we do. We're cool. We'll make it for nothing. I'll defer my whole salary. We'll have Doritos for lunch or whatever. But then I think that in a way is part of what the movie's about. Why, you know? Why? But at the same time, I think working with women and almost entirely women, I mean, our DP was a man, but he was a lover of women. I think, well, first of all, I don't think just because something is written or directed by a woman that it necessarily is an expression of something particularly female.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we live in a world where we're used to a kind of a masculine storytelling. We're used to the most interesting character being a man, like since we were kids, right? And in order to make the space in your mind to do something different, you know, to say something in a different way, and it's difficult. And I do think that what Sarah, our writer director, and me, and our three amazing women producers kind of did here is something new, you know, and I do think it's a feminine expression in a way that I don't think is we've seen that much of, you know, and in the way I think of it, I remember, what's his name? Trevor Noah. He was actually interviewing me about The Deuce, and he'd seen The Kindergarten Teacher, and he was like, what is this movie? Is it a horror movie? Is it a thriller? Is it like a sort of like French film, you know? And I loved that so much because I was like, it's really not any of them. I do think it's something new. And I love the way that audiences respond to it when they watch it, because it does in a way follow some classic elements of a thriller, and then it like totally trips you up, you know, as you watch it. And I do think, you know, I think people are used to seeing movies where women fall apart, where they're like, where it looks kind of more operatic, you know, it looks like, oh, well, she's nuts. She's losing it. And there's been so many incredible performances in that vein that I have absolutely loved growing up, like blown my mind, Jen Rollins style, you know. And yet, what about like just someone who's just like you, who could like be your neighbor or your friend and who falls apart? Because I think that's like a little bit more challenging in a way to go like, well, then can you fall apart? And isn't that really a possibility for all of us? Not that we're going to kidnap people, you know, I mean, there's like a dramatic, great extreme element to The Kindergarten Teacher, but like, I think it is asking, couldn't we all fall apart? And what if we did?
Yeah. And how far would we go if we did, I guess, too. What, Maggie, you talked about how the film was shot on a shoestring budget and sort of thing like that. What was can you think of a moment that was particularly exciting because of that? Or so maybe even a strength to the film in a scene or a moment because you had those limitations on you?
Well, that's every day, right? Like when you're working in that way, there's so many times where you're like, pick up the camera, get it. Okay, we have 5 minutes, like just get it, just shoot it, like however we can. And then there are also times where you're like working with a not DGA crew and the matte box falls off the camera, you know, and you're like, that was a great scene, fuck, you know. So it's always a combination of the two, right? It's like, and that's part of what gives it its life. And that's part, you know, in a way, to play someone as broken and shattered as Lisa is on like a big scale movie would mean I was feeling that way and doing those things for 4 months, as opposed to in this kind of a, not that anyone would do that, but in this case, it's 4 weeks. And so you can go really deeply into something. I mean, but there's so many examples. I don't like actually even know where to start. I mean, like, For how about this? We you know, we have these kids in the movie, and we have a little boy, and he can't work the same hours as we can, and yet we have no time. So lots of times we would shoot his side of a scene, and then I would shoot my side with our 50-year-old bearded first AD on his knees beside the camera, reading off camera for me. You know, which, like, in some ways you're like, what? How am I going to do this? And in other ways you're like, I mean, what else are you going to do? You know, you're just going to go for it. And for me, I think I would like, I would just be like, okay, there's something interesting about this, because I'm kind of wanting to relate to him as if he's a grown man. And I mean, there's that. I mean, I don't know what, we like somehow got the MoMA to let us shoot there, which was amazing, which just took so much. And then we like have no time, and we're running around the MoMA trying to get these shots. That was an amazing day. I told you, changing my clothes in the disgusting bathroom on the Staten Island ferry, which nobody should ever have to be naked in there. I mean, but I've got every day it's like that, you know, and right. That gives it some of its energy, some of its amazing. I mean, I feel so proud of having made a movie like this in that way. And yet, to be totally honest, I'd like to have had a little more money, you know, not to put in my pocket home, but to put on the screen, even though I love it. I love it even just as it is.
Yeah. Biggest challenge for you as an actress in the film? What was that?
I think sometimes when there's more fiction, like say, for example, Candy and the Deuce, and I've got a big crazy wig, and I got an accent, and I've like got 6-inch heels on, and I'm playing a sex worker on the street. You know, the fiction gives you freedom, and the fiction keeps it a little bit protected from like your own heart, even though your own heart's always in it, right? There's an ease and a tiny bit more of a remove. And here, where, I mean, obviously I'm so different than Lisa Spinelli in so many ways, but the way she looks, the way she talks, I mean, I hate it. I never want to see the sandals she wears ever again, you know, but like I dressed like that in college, and I think so did she, and I think that's why she still does. And, you know, there's so many things that are actually, there's not that comfort of that remove. And I found that hard. You know, I was not happy when I was making this movie. I mean, I was happy artistically, and I loved our set, you know, and I loved the women I was working with, and I loved the ideas, but they're painful ideas, and I didn't have a big curly wig I could put on. So I found that hard. And of course it's hard to work with kids. I mean, it's like a whole nother level of responsibility, you know, it's like a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
but
no, shooting with, yeah, no, go.
Yeah.
No, go.
No, I was just gonna, there was such like a nice ease on our set. And I think it was like a kind of, I mean, I've certainly had a wonderful ease with men and working with men, but there was something about the way we interacted with each other as women that I think, I don't know, it like made the pain and the ways in which we didn't have all the things we needed and all that. It just sort of, we took care of each other.
Yeah, I was going to say with the kids, I'm assuming all the parents knew that they were where they were meant to be at the right times and things like that.
Well, what we did with the kids was, you know, because I was a producer on this, I was in the production meetings, and they had originally planned to shoot the kids stuff sort of very conventionally in the way that you would shoot any scenes. And I said, there's no way we're going to, as an actress, you know, I know there's no way we're going to get what we want to get out of these kids if we like sort of line them up and do it as if, you know. So we shot it almost as if like we made it kindergarten. They called me Mrs. Spinelli. When we're painting pictures, we were really painting pictures. When we're doing the letters, we're really doing letters. We're really singing the songs. You can't get the kids to pretend that they're singing that song, or even to do it more than once in a reliable way. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff with the kids where they would be calling me Lisa Spinelli and asking me if they could go to the bathroom. And then they'd like come up to me and go like, I know you're in Batman. You know, like, well, it's kind of weird. Yeah. Like, It was a strange world we set up. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Kindergarten kids watching The Dark Knight.
Somebody knew I was a Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their parents.
Yeah, no, that's true. Maggie, you have had such a varied career and so many different roles, from Batman to the kindergarten teacher. Is there one that sticks in your mind as a role that you just keep on going back to?
I would say that there are a few that stick in my mind, you know, and I think it's interesting. When I read The Kindergarten Teacher, I went, oh, okay, this is like the next step in this. You know, I think of Secretary, I think of Sherry Baby, I think of Crazy Heart, I think of The Honorable Woman, I think of Candy and The Deuce, and then I think of this, and they're all kind of like women dealing with their thing. And when I read this, I was like, oh, this is mine. This is my thing. This is like this is the next one. This is the one for when I'm 39, you know? And it was, you know, I mean, I think in a way I know what I like. And there are other things in between that I've also loved. I mean, doing The Dark Knight was amazing, but it's a different kind of expression. I'm a piece of a big whole, a bigger whole, you know, as opposed to in this, it's like I can really, what's on my mind is going to be a really big part of what the movie's exploring, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'd say that there's like touchstones, you know?
Yeah. And I guess to finish up, Maggie, what is the one thing you'd want audiences to take away from this film, if they took away one thing?
Can I say two?
I'll allow it.
Thanks. I think one of them is what I said before, you know, which is like really, really what happens when you starve a woman, a great woman. It's not okay. You know, like the consequences are dire. But I would also say the thing I really, maybe the really number one is compassion. You know, is to look at someone who's really having a hard time and really does cross lines that are unacceptable, and see if you can understand them and have actual compassion instead of judgment.
I think in the times we live today, that is particularly challenging for a lot of people, I think. So
it's always challenging. It's always challenging.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The times in general are challenging, you know?
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Maggie, so much for your work on congratulations so much for your work on the film, and thank you so much for talking to us about it today. All the best of luck for the awards that are coming along the line, and for nominations in those areas. You got an Oscar nomination for Crazy Heart, so it'd be nice to see how things go for The Kindergarten Teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
All right.
Okay.